Dave, welcome to Blues on the Hill.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Now, you've been doing this for over 40 years in the music business. You're known mainly as a full-on blues rocker, yet here you are doing an acoustic tour.
Yeah.
What's brought this on?
Well, I've been asked to do acoustic stuff for many years actually, as a bit of, since the unplugged thing kind of took off, and I've always resisted it. But in the last year or so, I've been doing some recording and that, and I've been using the dobro, the resonator guitar, and quite getting into it, and sort of I started to think, this really is enjoyable. So when I was asked by the promoter to do this Australian little run, I relented and said, yeah. He's always been saying, why don't you do some acoustic stuff and do a few shows. So yeah, it just came about, seemed the right time, and it's different, so it's good. It's enjoyable because it is a whole different take on what I do.
Well, I personally think the essence of blues music is the sound of slide guitar. So you've captured that sound electrically for your whole career. What is it about slide that got you?
Oh, I think it's the vocal sound, really. I mean, it just has that sound that's a little bit akin to a human voice. Now let's face it, a human voice is what we're all primed, in our core beings to respond to. Like sense that we like singing and that. But instrumentally, I think it sort of mimics the human voice, and I've always found that the slide guitar sings to me, more than probably anything else. So I've always enjoyed the sound of it. But I had played standard, what we call standard guitar. I'd done that for about 12, 15 years. I've been playing before I picked up a slide.
Okay.
And when I first did slide guitar, it was just a couple of songs, a bit of variation, and but people requested it. I'd find the audiences would say, "Oh, come up, what was that song you did? With that steel bar." So it sort of started to grow, and I started, I add a couple more slide songs, and then another one, and it's sort of become a monster and taken over. It's become what I'm known for.
Yeah. Now, so playing your acoustic set introduces you to a much simpler, raw sound. How does that change the feel of your songs and how you go about them?
Well, it's interesting. I thought when I first decided to do some acoustic stuff that I would really dig heavily into the what you call the standard repertoire, the classic blues things, your Robert Johnsons and Skip James, or whatever. Mississippi Fred McDowell. I thought I'd do that, a lot of their stuff, because that's acoustic material. I started doing some of that, but then I tried a few of my songs that I do electrically, loud, with the band, and they seem to work too. But they're different. They're altered, and they're stripped back, and in a way they work equally well as I think as they do in a full-on setting.
Going by tonight's show, I have to agree with you.
Yeah, they just sound different. They just sound different. I don't think,
Yeah. So it's been around 8 years since your last tour in Australia. You spend the majority of your time touring overseas. What's the difference between the blues scene here and in other countries?
Well, I can't really generalise because every country's different. Like America, obviously, which I've probably had the most experience playing in, is obviously it's the home of the blues. So you're in good hands there. There's a lot of people who know a lot about the blues, and a lot of the fans are very, I don't say educated, but they hear a lot of stuff. They've heard all the greats there. That we hear only, like in Australia, we only get sort of B.B. King once every few years. He's there all the time, and that goes for all the blues greats. That these are people. Some of the older people will come along and they've seen. I might do a Muddy Waters song, and they say, "Oh, I saw Muddy do that song." And so they, you can't sort of cruise. You've got to be on your game when you're playing America. So
they're a tough crowd, aren't they?
But they know their stuff, but you know, they're pretty kindly. They're really quite a good audience. I like playing to American audiences, but I mean equally, Australia's home. It always feels comfortable to play in Australia, and European audiences actually have their pluses also, because they more than anywhere seem to regard blues as like a cultural thing. They actually give it quite a lot of credibility. You know, they sort of put it up there like with classical music and that as a valid sort of music form, whereas there is a tendency a lot of places, Australia perhaps, to think of it as like, you know, well, it's just kind of rough and ready music, you know, which it is rough and ready, but you know, Europeans kind of see it as part of a cultural heritage, you know, from the black people, of course, you know, from the origins in the South of America and all that sort of thing. So they see it as an ongoing musical tradition, sort of more than anywhere else. And so they're a bit more respectful, you know. And so you play sometimes to European audiences, like say the German audiences and French audiences. They all applaud. You know, you would think you're at a jazz concert or something like that, you know. The Scandinavians a bit look more like Australians. They put it out there. They go nuts and they drink a lot and they have a good time. I always feel like I'm pretty much in Australia when I'm up in, say, you know, in Scandinavia. So they're Vikings up there. So we're, you know, a bit like the Australians. Yeah.
And a lot of the American bluesmen too, like went over to Europe later on in their careers and revived their careers in Europe, didn't they? As you were talking about the Europeans.
And that's to do with what I was talking about, because a lot of them were taken for granted in America, you know, like because they're there all the time, and when they went to Europe, they were treated like stars, like, you know.
Yeah, Luther Allison.
Special. Yeah, Luther's a great coin. You know, I mean, he lived in France for so many years because he got treated better there, and he you know, he went back. And he was on Alligator Records and went back to the States and did his last few albums there. And I was pleased to say he got the respect that he deserved then, you know.
Yeah.
Late in life. But yes, definitely. And a lot of the blues guys, you know, going back even to the 1960s and so on, they were better regarded in Europe than in their home country, you know.
And while we're talking about this, I found that many Australian blues musicians I talk to get much more recognition and respect internationally than here. Why do you think that is?
Well, I can't speak for other people, but I won't say I get more respect, but it's just that, well, from my own personal perspective, my career really got kick-started in America. I mean, I played for about 20 years around Western Australia. I was a local act, you know, played around pubs and clubs, and I didn't really venture much outside of Western Australia. I wasn't widely known in Australia. And then I made my first album, and it was picked up by Alligator Records and everything, and I started touring properly internationally in America. So I sort of got my break in America, if you like, and I feel like that was my basis from which I became known. I actually got known in Europe from having been a lot of Europeans thought I was an American artist, you know.
Really?
Yeah, sort of thing. And I also got, in a way, I think I did get known more in Australia, the other states of Australia, you know, like Victoria or New South, other eastern states. I got known there more from the fact that I'd done something in America than actually being a West Australian.
Yeah.
So I kind of got around the circuitous way of getting known in my own country, you know.